When did they start letting gays in here?
What's wrong with your habit?
Budget cuts, my dear. I'm still waiting on that goddamn stimulus check.
Aren't we all?
Amen, sister. Oh, wait, that's me. Hello, everyone. I am Sister Danica Monica, and this is Megan.
I'm Megan.
She chose the lay life. So this is our new show.
I have the more interesting life compared to you right now.
Amen to that. The convent is so boring. So Megan and I are starting a new political talk show. Hilarious and terrifying at the same time. Backstory is during this wonderful shelter-in-place quarantine, this is weird, like you can't even see what's happening. Spent many a nights, 3 o'clock in the morning, FaceTiming, Zooming, Skyping, whatever video thing worked for us at the time, because we're not technologically advanced.
We have a bone to pick with each one of them, by the way.
Each of you guys suck in your own unique, beautiful ways. God bless you. And so we figured, that's good, yeah. We figured, why not bring this to you? We would bring our political rants, our stories, our hilarity, things of that sort. So this is what this is. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Dan, for those of you that don't know me. Most of you do, because you're the only people watching. Chicago gay, native to this windy city. I have an unhealthy obsession with both politics and the Golden Girls. You'll see that in a moment. And, you know, I just love a good martini and some useless facts that I love to spew out and no one is going to listen to. And so on that, I will let Megan introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Megan. I'm 32. I'm a Cancer. I love short walks on a flat surface. I do love a good Jack and Coke.
I'm back. Is this our show, or did you bring me into one of those weird dating app intro videos again?
Wait, what are we doing?
I'm not.
No.
She's great.
Sorry,
she's
that's
great.
The wrong one.
She's
okay. We're back.
Good shoulder to cry on. You know, my teeth look weird with this stupid thing.
Budget cuts, my dear. Budget cuts.
God bless you, my child. Shout out that nurse costume. I literally ordered after I saw a hilarious Lisa Koch. She's a female comedian. She's a very good friend named Sister Mary Frances Labia. Look her up, heylisa.com. Find her on Facebook. Everything about her. Lisa, please don't get mad at me for buying that in costume, but it was amazing. So, anywho.
It's a tribute to you.
It is, yeah, exactly. And all the lesbian comedians who are finding their way in this pandemic world.
We all know I love me some lesbians, so.
You're a lesbian?
No.
Oh, okay. Well then. Good. So anywho, this is our show. You may agree with what we have to say. You probably won't. We will probably offend quite a few people. And some of you may never talk to us again. And, you know, that's
okay with us.
Yeah, it is what it is. You know, I mean, we're coming from a point of, we're going to give you guys our perspectives. It's backed up with factual statements. And this episode right now is the intro to see if you guys even like us enough to go on. And then we'll bring new episodes and new topics. We'll do deeper dives. We'll have some guests. Our mothers, because I think they're the only ones that'll come on the show at this point. But who knows? Maybe I can guilt my husband into doing it. We'll see.
Let's bring him on.
Yeah, he won't. But that's fine. So, you know, it's cool. We'll just...
How's it martini?
Oh, it's delicious. It's my fourth. The first time we recorded this, that was my third. So here we are.
So what's the first topic you want to talk about?
So let's chat about coronavirus.
That's still going on?
You know, contrary to popular belief, it is. It still is. You know, we've had a lot of other happenings going on, rightfully so. There have been protests, again, rightfully so.
Absolutely.
fighting for a movement that needs to be fought for. But coronavirus kind of took a back burner. And I think the asshat in the White House was grateful for that, because he had such a dismal approach to that pandemic.
Yes.
It was a hoax for the first 2 months, I think, or so. And now currently we are at 2.2 million plus confirmed cases, the most in any country in the world. 120,000 deaths and counting. They're projecting 200 by September. That's ridiculous, my opinion.
Yeah.
So now our show is going to be half comedic and half factual, and we're going to call shit out when it is ridiculous. And just abysmal is really what it is. You know, the man was never equipped to handle, well, really anything in his life. You know,
businesses, paying people.
Yeah. So many states are doing things well. They are largely blue states.
Can you say that one more time?
We never changed the goddamn background. Again, first show, folks. We'll get this together. Probably never. Cool. There we go. Good. Yep. Mm-hmm. So we traveled to the Capitol, right? Safety, you know, wearing a mask. You know, she drove the whole way. I didn't.
In my U-Haul.
I can't drive. Yeah.
It was a little much.
Yeah, it was quite, you know. So some states are doing this really well. Number one is ours, Illinois. Yes. I've never thought that I would be proud of Illinois in any way, shape, or form, but we have the lowest count of new cases per day across the country. We shut down totally, like Pritzker and Lightfoot shut it down. It hurt. It hurt a lot of small businesses.
Definitely did.
Saved a lot of lives. Did not overwhelm the hospital system.
Nope.
Michigan is doing it really well. They are hitting. I think we were the first ones to hit all of the criteria for the CDC to start opening.
Yes.
Michigan is doing that now. New York, they were the epicenter. They're doing well. California is experiencing some spikes, so they've instituted a statewide mask thing. Who's not doing well are those states that actually didn't close or didn't do really anything.
Get out of here.
I know, you know, and these names are going to surprise you. Florida, Georgia, Texas. Florida actually started to reopen last week, but they never really.
I was going to say they never really closed.
Fully closed. They started to reopen last week, and now they're closing just a week later because they're spiking. There are 2,000 new cases per day. And in one case,
and they seem shocked by that.
I mean, it's pretty shocking. You know, you have a group of people together.
No masks.
Yeah. Side note, we are next to each other, but we have been sheltering in place for the last 3 months and not really going into a big group of folk and
taking all the precautions, keeping our families, you know, both safe.
Yeah, and so we figured it would be fine for us to meet together. I'm the sacrificial lamb. I'm the one who gets to go to the grocery store every day or every other day with a mask and whatnot. But other than that, I don't leave my house. So.
And you've been tested.
And I've been tested.
Yes.
Yes. So, you know, whether or not it's accurate, we'll see. But there was
bigly negative.
The big
positive, negative.
Exactly.
The best positive, negative you could have.
The best positive. Yes, exactly.
Most positive. Yes.
The most stable genius in the White House. Going back to Florida, Governor DeSantis, Ron DeSantis. Yeah. One of probably the most ill-equipped people to handle said pandemic in his state.
Yes.
There are no old people in Florida.
No, I think it's all young people.
And it's not like coronavirus like impacts the elderly more drastically than anybody else, right?
Yes.
So he didn't shut anything down. You know, and there's also reports of him fudging the numbers. So you'll see pneumonia deaths in Florida the months preceding 300, 2,500.
Right.
It's like, oh, that's
suspicious.
Interesting.
They call it suspect.
I also don't trust DeSantis as far as I can throw him because he shouldn't be governor in the first place.
No, absolutely should
because of a wonderful thing called voter suppression, which we'll talk about in a later episode.
That sounds like a very good topic, by the way.
Oh, it's gonna be a long one. I already got stuff waiting. It's gonna
be
happen.
A doozy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So PSA, friends, coronavirus is still a thing. It's still out there. I know that there have been states opening up. You get to go to a restaurant. There have been protests. So if you do feel a need to protest and defend your First Amendment right and support a community that really needs the support of everybody right now, go for it. Be safe though. Wear a mask. 6 feet apart as much as you can. Wash your hands. Like just. And if you can't, if you are supporting someone or living with someone who you don't want to risk getting sick, figure out other ways to do it. And we'll follow up. We could figure, support a local community. If you have the means to do it, donate money to a local charity. If there's some way that you can donate your time in person in a socially distanced manner, do that. Please don't go to a political rally for the sole means of supporting this very tiny man with a very large ego, maybe in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Don't do that. That's not a thing. And if you do, don't sign the waiver because this was a hoax. So why is he making you sign a waiver if you're going to contract a virus that was a hoax so you can't sue him in his campaign?
Doesn't really add up.
Sign
this waiver for something that's not true.
So many things.
And it doesn't really affect a lot of people.
And again, wash your hands.
And wear a mask. It's not that hard.
Mm-hmm. My sister got me a mask. It's the gayest mask that ever gave. It's a giant rainbow. So if there were ever any questions of my gayness, it has been answered. Totally. And I wear it with pride, just like this Golden Girl shirt, which I mentioned. Yeah. So anyway, on that note, Megan,
Katie, take note and get me one of those masks.
Yeah, ask him. So Megan, what would you like to talk about?
So my topic that I would like to discuss is obviously police brutality and protests. We all know that protests came about through every major event in history when groups are trying to fight for freedoms. Did we want to point out a little something?
Well, so there's a distinguishing factor of protests, riots, and looters. And Megan will touch on all three. But the fact is, protests are protests. Mm-hmm. Riots sometimes need to happen.
Yeah.
So the fact that we can be openly gay and happy in the gays is because of Stonewall. Right? Which, fun fact, gays, learn your history, it was started by a Black drag queen.
Yes.
So we need to support all the people in our community.
Absolutely.
But Stonewall was started because the police in New York routinely raided bars that the gays were in, and they beat the hell out of everybody and trashed the place. And finally, they said enough is enough, and they started throwing bricks.
I support it.
We don't condone violence here. Condone violence here at all. But preceding that was a lot of peaceful protests that people were just not listening to. And when you talk about what's happening today, peaceful protests. I will rarely talk about sports because I don't even know how many baskets need to be scored to win a hockey game. But like it's Colin Kaepernick, like peaceful protest by definition. Mm-hmm. And like literally Americans were going to throw away the NFL because of that, because of his peaceful protest.
You could only be peaceful for so long.
Yeah.
I mean,
Martin Luther King says the riots are the voices of those that go unheard.
Yeah, absolutely.
He said it much more eloquently than I did after
There's
four
nothing
martinis.
About us.
But that's the case. And the other fact is our country, the U.S. of A., started with a riot.
Was that the
Boston Tea Party? We didn't just go to the English and say, hey, you know what? We're good. If you want to just like give us our colonies, we're good. Like, you know, you do you, we'll do us. No, that's not a thing. We literally burned Boston Harbor to the ground, and we dumped a shit ton of tea into the harbor, and that got the attention of the English. It did.
You
so,
you have to do crazy shit to get people's attention.
And so, you know what? Again, we don't condone violence. Like, we don't want people to be hurt.
No.
But you know what? Sometimes you need to do things like that to be heard.
Yes. A building could be rebuilt.
We'll get to the Target
CEO right.
in a moment.
Right. Bring him into this.
Back to you, Megan.
Oh, jeez, you just took away that topic with some fire. But I support you. We know that these protests all started by 4 police officers in Minneapolis that allegedly murdered George Floyd. And I say allegedly not because I want to take away from the fact that this, was murdered. We say this because
our lawyers said we needed to say that.
Yeah, we had to consult our lawyer, our team first.
We have no lawyers.
None whatsoever.
We should probably need some after this.
I think so. Until there's a conviction, we're going to keep saying alleged.
Right.
But we'll saw that video. Which thank God for videos these days because it's gone how many years being unnoticed. So obviously George Floyd, he was just that last little spark that was just blew the protests up. And it, again, going just nonstop, peaceful protest after peaceful protest, kneeling, and every single thing, people turned a blind eye to it. And it was just like, Colin Kaepernick, he's disrespectful, And finally, it takes burning things down and starting a riot, to actually get some attention. Not saying that we can do it again. But there is a difference between protests, riots, and looters. And, talking about looters and with the riots, in Minneapolis, they did burn down a Target, started on fire, and they looted it. And the very CEO of Target came out with a statement, and he supports the movement. I don't know verbatim like what he said. We could share that, but he supports it, and he has the millions of billions, whatever, of dollars to rebuild. And people weren't understanding the message of burning the Target down. It's because systemic racism in these communities, and you have these big corporations, and they said the same thing, like, yeah, they're going to go in there and burn it down or loot it, whatever, and it'll be back up the next day. Again, should never steal, do like all of those things, but you could only go so far and just be pushed and just
400 years.
Exactly. Yeah. Until there's a breaking point. So yes, we could all sit there.
400 years. I would say that's the most resilient community that there is.
Absolutely. And then just going with the protesters, you have obviously the Black Lives Matter movement, and so many people just link it just as this negative movement that they're causing people bodily harm. They're taking lives, and they attacked. What was it, the Santa Cruz County police officer deputy, that was, a deputy. Mm-hmm. He was murdered. And of course, everybody said Black Lives Matter, murdered him. And it comes out that it wasn't Black Lives Matter. And this is proof. I mean, there's actual proof. So it's not just like people trying to cover it up. There is proof that Boogaloo, that's what I say,
and along with Proud Boys, 2 of the most predominant white supremacist groups. Are behind a lot of this destruction and carnage and death in this case.
Right. Took a man's life.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, there's proof of this, and people do not like to follow the facts. They'll jump on social media and share articles and say, oh, it's this group, it's that group, and it's a group. And it's like, just look it up. There's facts. This was not Black Lives Matter that, did this. Bottom line is just, support the protests and the movement. Don't be distracted by those trying to cause a ruckus and move that attention away from the movement. Mm-hmm. And then, looters are losers and protesters are genuine.
Yeah, so I think and just literally to drive home, because I think the 80% of the country supports the Black Lives Matter movement. And I've spoken to several police officers who are family and friends of mine that literally said what happened in Minneapolis was wrong. What that officer did, Chauvin,
Chauvin,
was appalling and morbid, and that should not have happened. Mm-hmm. But then as we start to see these protests and things move throughout the major cities, they're like, well, you're working against your cause if you're destroying a local storefront or things like that. Really draw a fine line between protesters, rioters. We talked about how they kind of blend together in certain large societal movements, and the looters. And then there are outside agitators who are literally being paid to go and cause carnage and cause chaos. And there was a man who, from Chicago, drove to Minneapolis, handed out explosives to throw at police officers, and then drove back here, and he was finally arrested. So the protesters they're literally they are calling out for support for their communities, and they're calling out for us. Yeah. White people, gay people, brown people, Asian people. We all need to come together. And unfortunately, we have somebody in not this building, because the lady who runs this building is doing a really great job.
Hey, girl.
Hey, Nancy, love you. The person down the street, though, however, he's dividing more than uniting. And Absolutely. That's how he's successful. That's how he appeals to 28% of the country, mm-hmm. which is his base, and that's about it. So,
just really quick too, bringing up Chicago.
Don't go on a tangent.
I'm not going on my tangent.
Okay.
We don't have time for that. But just really quick, there was a video that was just a perfect display here that the protesters were, standing in front of the police officers. It was peaceful exchanges, and a group came in and literally started throwing bricks, and mm-hmm. there was just rocks and bricks that were just stacked up, and they started throwing the bricks and literally hit 2 women protesters in the head, and other protesters grabbed these women and moved them and helped them.
Were they protesters or police officers?
No, protesters. Because there was outside agitators. There were people there to just take away from the message of peaceful protesters fighting for a cause.
Right.
And people just need to be able to decipher.
And I saw a video where a female police officer was pulled into a crowd, dragged, mm-hmm. and the protesters literally went and grabbed her and brought her back out to safety.
And formed a circle too, to keep them safe. Yeah. And there's bad apples in everything, and it's just, you have to be able to decipher between that.
Agreed.
It's just,
and we'll talk about more individuals, like a name that you'll hear in our next. We'll do her next, Candace Owens, the sellout to the Black community, to her own people. She found out it was more.
Never like to hear her name.
She found out it was more profitable to be a Black woman and speak out against the Black community than it would be to support them, and she just cashed out.
She's a complete sellout, in my opinion.
But again, we do want to. Bottom line: support the movement, support the protesters. I know it's inconvenient when they close down roads and and they take over large municipalities, but listen to the message. And honestly, things are changing.
Yeah,
things are changing. Minneapolis is starting reforms. Chicago's talking about reforms.
New York.
It's going to be a topic that we're going to touch on in a bit. But just support the movement. We need less hate. We need more unity. And we're stronger together. And I hate using a Hillary phrase because no one hates Hillary, but we are stronger as a country together. So on that note,
just united as one. United States of America. Can't we all just be one?
We should be. Yeah, exactly. So now we're gonna just shift here to my glass is not working quite well, but yeah. So the Supreme Court. Yeah. So here we are. We moved from the Capitol to the White House. We walked. You didn't see it happening.
Get those steps in.
I didn't walk because I can't walk that far. The Supreme Court this week made a decision about Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which occurred in 1964, which makes it illegal, as of this week, for employers to discriminate because of a person's sex, and it also covers sexual orientation and their transgender identity. This is huge. This is literally I can't be fired just because I have a husband. Megan can't be fired because she's a lesbian who hopefully has a wife someday, which I thought this was the dating app in the beginning that we were talking about.
I'm very disappointed.
I thought that's what we were doing,
this is not,
but I'm not.
By the way.
Well, if we have time at the end, maybe we can do a plea for that. So this is great. This is amazing. But it's also like, so this Civil Rights Act was in 1964. And up until this week, it didn't cover us. It didn't cover the transgender community. So as of this week, there were 29 states where we could be fired. Example, I could marry my husband on Sunday and be fired on Monday in 29 states until this ruling happened.
And so many people don't know that.
And they didn't know that.
29 states out of 50
29 states. 50
we do
states.
have 50, right?
Well, Trump says that 100 governors called him. Anywho. So, and similar to the transgender community, like if you really want to just live your true self, be your true self, you could be fired for that. And kicked off the payroll, kicked off the insurance, which people desperately need. We'll get to that. We should probably add that to our list too. But my point is, this is a great ruling. I had family members who saying, this is great, you should have helped. Like, I told you it was going to come. I get it, but it should have came way sooner. Like, this is 2020. Yeah. Sorry, Barbara, I took your line. But like, we need to be better. Too, we need to be better. And honestly, reading on, it was a 6-3 vote. Normally it's 5-4, when you track Supreme Court politics.
Everything.
But it was interesting because Neil Gorsuch, who was Trump's first Supreme Court nominee or appointee, which Mitch McConnell quickly let in.
Oh, that Mitch, he's a funny guy.
Merrick Garland had to wait a year and then it never happened. And John Roberts. So like those two, I feel like John Roberts is trying to like maintain any type of integrity that the Supreme Court might have, right? Or maybe he just has like the good old Catholic guilt about the Supreme or Senate impeachment trial that never really happened.
Just trying to keep a little bit of dignity now.
But you know what? Speaking of impeachment, let's chat about our next few things, right?
Yes.
So speaking of impeachment, we have some future topics in the next few weeks. It's not playing. It's not playing.
Hit play.
I did hit play. There was supposed to be music. Not happening. We'll work with our production crew, which is currently sleeping right now.
Budget.
Literally, this took so long. They're all sleeping. This is it.
It's just us and our dreams. Jackson.
Jackson's literally sleeping behind this backdrop on a blue velvet sofa. And he is not moving and not helping with the audiovisual shitstorm that we're experiencing. So, speaking of impeachment, dun, dun, dun. So in the next few weeks, if you'll let us, we'll touch on several topics. If you hate this, just tell us, and we won't do this again.
No,
or we will.
I stand against that. If you hate this, turn us off.
Well, I like to be liked. I'm kidding. I don't have friends. Nobody likes me.
No, if we could seriously bring facts to 5 people, and bring some humor into this and hear your side and you hear our side and can make some sort of change and come together, I support it. Screw the rest of you.
You literally took my closing.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
Well, cool. So anywho.
Welcome to the Megan Show.
Uh-huh. So anyway, in the next few weeks, we'll touch on a few things. Back tying to impeachment before I was rudely interrupted by someone. We'll talk about John Bolton, which I always want to call Michael Bolton, but I feel like that's an insult to Michael because John Bolton is an ass. The fact, and it's hilarious because Donald Trump is trying to sue John Bolton to stop the release of a book that has already been released, which further shows how ill-prepared these people are to govern this country. Like a day late, a dollar short.
Like the media already has everything.
They have books. People have pre-ordered these books. They're literally being delivered. Like they're not.
We know what happened.
And I'm not going to buy the book because
No,
I think
fuck
that
him.
John Bolton is an asshat and should have came forward when it was his patriotic duty to do so. But thankfully, all of these wonderful reporters are sharing stories about all this stuff. So we'll bring more to that. And there are some wonderful, like Ukraine, super small potatoes.
I'm gonna have to use that one in the future. Just like
It's trademarked.
Did you trademark it?
No.
No. Thought you had the law team out there again.
Yeah, they're behind us sleeping.
You know, some topics that I would like to discuss in the future. Obviously, some racial inequities. Go back and forth with those. Protests are just the top layer of 400 plus years of systemic racism that we'll discuss. And then I'd like to talk about defunding the police. You know, that's a slogan that's used, defunding the police. And I was the first one to come out, you know, in our group, and I said straight out, like, I don't completely understand it. Is it, you know, completely like there's going to be no police officers, or, you know, like, what is it? And, you know, our job, not our job, like our job as a society, is when you hear these things to look these things up. So is it the wrong word to be used? What does it actually mean? So we'll eventually be able to break this down for everyone so that you do understand it, because it had to be broken down for me.
Mm-hmm.
Had to do all the research, and it will bring along all different, you know, perspectives. And I think that's something that we want to bring to everybody, is different perspectives, so that we could come together and hopefully come up with just one opinion that could save this damn country.
Well, and I think with that especially, it's how do we rethink communities? Now, when we say defund the police, and that was a triggered way to say it.
Yeah.
And it's on both sides. Like, that's exactly,
Absolutely.
you know. And so you have people on one side saying that, oh, you're getting rid of all the police. No, that's not what we're saying.
Right.
It's reform. It's accountability. It's how do we best spend our dollars across the board. And it's probably going to take 2 or 3 sessions for us to break it down.
Absolutely.
Because there's
so many levels.
There's community employment. There's education. There's housing security. There's actual policing. There, you know, there's so many things. But it is a conversation that I think needs to be had, clearly.
And nobody just wants to get rid of the police. We need the police. It's just not something that... Let's just boot them all out.
No, that's not what we're saying at all. It is just, it's a different way of thinking about how our communities are built, I would say.
Yeah.
And it's thinking about everything.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and lastly, for now, although we have some notes about things that I just created to talk about, we're going to chat about voter suppression versus voter fraud. And surprise, surprise,
there's a difference?
Republicans do both. I know, it's hilarious, isn't it? Right? They blame us for it, but here we are. So we'll chat about how Republicans try to suppress the votes, mainly of the minority population, because that's the easiest, right? And we'll get into how that works. Constantly changing where you live. You don't live for the same place in extended periods of time, so you don't have the same address. You clearly get booted off the voter rolls. You have to work, so you can't stand in line for 4 hours, you know? So maybe
so many people, multiple jobs.
Maybe election day should be a national holiday. We'll chat. A lot of states are doing that.
Illinois
did it, thank God. And we'll chat about voter fraud, which Donald Trump apparently has done once and will do again.
Allegedly,
sorry, lawyers. So Donald Trump is voting in Florida, and he's claiming that he lives at Mar-a-Lago, but Mar-a-Lago is a business, and you can't live at a business address, according to county and Florida law. Yet he voted. So he's the one who says mail-in voting is fraudulent. So maybe he's right. Also, we'll chat about his new Postmaster General, because I'm terrified about that. Also, his kids are registered in multiple states. They can vote in multiple states.
That seems legal.
Yeah. Well, if you're the president's children.
Yeah. You don't have to follow any rules.
Fun fact about voter fraud is 24% of votes cast from 2000 to 2012 were fraudulent. 24% in 12 years. That translates to 491 votes in 12 years out of billions of votes cast.
Like, just to repeat that, 491.
So we have 300 and some million people in the country, right? Out of 12 years, 491 were fraudulently voting. So maybe voter fraud is not a thing. But when you get to voter suppression, though, in any given election, you have 30,000 people that couldn't vote per year. Let's talk about that. We're going to. Maybe not next time. Maybe we're going to need time to plan that out. So, you know what? And thanks for hanging out with us, friends. It's, I mean.
Yeah, because I'm getting sick of just this guy.
Oh, God. I don't even know I let her in my house. She's been here for
our house.
She's been here for 3 days. She refuses to leave. It's great.
I have to quarantine for 14.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to have these shows, whether you like it or not. Hopefully you like it. If you don't watch.
But please do.
Yeah, but we're going to talk about fun stuff. And we're going to have guests, our mothers maybe, coming on. We'll see what we see. What do you want to talk about?
Mr. Jackson come on?
Well, if he's not sleeping
Mr.
behind
Jackson.
us. So we'll close with, what have you been doing during this quarantine to keep you, sane?
Honestly, I'm thriving. I'm a Cancer. I'm a natural.
Really, go on. Let me get another drink.
No, you do that.
Good.
I'm a natural homebody. I'm a housewife.
To your sister.
To my sister. Hey, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
No, I've just been spending a lot of time with, my family. I picked up a guitar.
I heard.
Yes.
Literally.
Literally.
Yeah.
Thank you. Shout out to Katie for getting that for an early birthday gift. So I'm teaching myself to play the guitar, which took me 4 hours to learn how to tune it, which was kind of embarrassing, but it literally comes with a clamp that goes on there and tells you how to tune it. Anyways, it took me 4 hours. But yeah, spending time with the family, and teaching myself guitar. That's all I got for you.
Good.
And, obviously following current events, because I think that's a huge thing. I took a couple days off to where I was I think I mentally need a break. And, I know a lot of other people that same thing when just I just need to take a break.
Right.
And I don't think that's a good thing. I think it's good, obviously, for your mental health, to be able to not go down these dark holes or anything. But taking a break from it, you do fall behind. I think it's something that you need to stay on top of these things and, fight for certain rights and just stay educated on it. But that's about it. What have you been doing?
Drinking a shit ton of vodka.
Oh, I didn't want to bring up my drinking habits.
Eating too much and drinking too much, watching way too much Netflix. No, honestly, I've been doing, we've been getting a lot of stuff done around the house. Mm-hmm. My new business has been kind of slowed given current pandemic situations. We've been babysitting my goddaughter 3 days a week, which has been absolutely fabulous. And I do a bonfire every night out in the backyard. Mm-hmm. And it's just me alone watching
sometimes
news.
We're on FaceTime too.
Or FaceTime, yeah. Or watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which my neighbors are terrified when they hear that happening. But yeah, it's been a nice way to kind of slow down a bit. And yeah, other than the vodka, it's great. Yeah.
How's your church wine?
Church wine is great. It's yeah. And so here we find ourselves, as if 2020 keeps its reputation up, here we are at the Michael Myers house.
I'm gonna have to close with this one because he is my biggest fear.
Shut up, he's my friend.
I love him and all, but I just
how not surprised would you be if 2020, the way it's going, if Michael Myers literally just came through that door?
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Also, you're gonna have to walk me to the cab tomorrow because no drinking and driving, guys.
No, we don't do that.
We don't do that.
Well, so this has been really fun, and we're gonna do it again, unfortunately, for all of you.
Yeah, we feel bad for you guys.
Yeah, but here we are.
Stick it out.
Yeah. So we'll be back soon. See you guys later.
Love yous.
Bye. Bye.